faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting even when you don't. Today we're talking about what faith really is.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to Holy Spirits. For today's episode, we're making a cocktail called the Act of Faith. The Act of Faith is a boozy, direct cocktail with notes of molasses and burnt sugar and a little bit of like dried fruit and fig, you know? So this is going to be built straight into a single rocks glass. All you need for this is going to be your glassware, some ice, and your ingredients, as well as a jigger to measure your ingredients and a nice stirring spoon. We'll start off by measuring out a half an ounce of Pedro Jimenez sherry. Pedro Jimenez sherry is a dried fortified wine. This will bring in those notes of the dark fruit fig and some slight citrus notes. At the same time here, I'll go in and add a 1/4 ounce of Angostura bitters. From there, we'll add a 1/2 ounce of blackstrap rum. And next, we'll be using 1.5 ounces of Jamaican rum. As you can see, we're building straight into the glass. Since it's a stirred cocktail, no need to go into another tin or another mixing glass. It'll be all done right in here. Our next step is to add our ice. You could use your bar spoon to layer it in here, and we'll give it a good stir. Finally, we'll go ahead and garnish this with an orange peel. This cocktail is a nice, interesting and complex rum old-fashioned variation. Nice silky mouthfeel as well. The Act of Faith. Thank you. Oh,
that one's a little stronger than the other ones.
yes.
That was a good one.
This is gonna be the first.
That's a sipping cocktail, right?
Definitely, yeah.
For real.
Doesn't it feel different? Like on the palate, it's like silky and rich and full,
Yeah,
right?
it's like nice and smooth.
And definitely hot. I'll tell you that. But it's the first stirred cocktail we've done for the series, and I mean, what do you guys think?
I like it, nice and smooth. Tastes like an old fashioned, but better, more flavor, smoother.
I mean, yeah,
It's not like as bitter. It's like you said, silky. I
yeah,
like that word.
Silky smooth,
it's got
baby.
some heat though, for sure.
silky smooth. Yeah, I mean, this is built off of old-fashioned build, where spirit and a slight sweetener, and then a little garnish peel. This is rum though. Rum is gonna have like a more deep sugar, molasses, and heavy mouthfeel. But what's really bringing in a lot of complexity is a Pedro Jimenez sherry. What they do is they take their grapes and they dry them in the sun for a certain amount of time, and then they make wine out of that, right? And then they add sugar and they add alcohol, which is what makes it that aromatized fortified wine. And that's what you're really getting a lot of the flavor here, like dark fig and raisin, right? Doesn't this almost get like a raisin feel to it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But the cocktail being called Act of Faith is a interesting topic, as in we've been doing this series, and it's not like we are following any religion in specific. It's not like we have any, I guess for sure, yeah, we take the teachings. However, faith is having the faith that knowing that Jesus Christ is real, God is real, and you having faith without knowing all the answers. I heard an example recently, like, do you know everything about, for example, you, Colin, that you have a fiance, you know everything that there is to know about her? You know everything that she knows? Is there 100% knowledge about her in your mind?
I mean,
No, right?
probably more than anyone else, but yeah,
Of course.
you could really say probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, but you still have to take that faith in trusting her and having that connection with that person, right? Same goes to like faith where you don't need to have all the answers. People are always looking for all the answers to make it feel right, make it feel real. But there's so many examples in life where we give faith to things that you don't really have all of the answers to. It's not about having all the answers, you know? It's about being able to take that faith and running with it, I guess. And one of the biggest examples is the story of Abraham. Right? You both have heard of the story of Abraham in the Bible?
I'm less literate about Old Testament, but yeah, I got.
Yeah,
I haven't read that whole chapter yet, but for sure I know.
You know,
I mean, I
right?
researched a little bit.
And it is in the Old
the gist.
Testament. The Old Testament meaning that this was before the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. So this is actually in the first segment of the Bible, Genesis. The story of Abraham is a whole thing. However, there is this one segment of it that kind of catches my attention, which is the story of when he had to sacrifice his own child under the faith of God. Story
God
goes,
commands him to.
exactly. So Abraham and his wife had been struggling to have kids for their whole life, and at an old age, he ends up having a child under the words of God. God told him that if he goes to this certain land, his offspring will end up, taking over that land. And his one child, Isaac.
He says you'll be the father of nations. You'll, I can't remember this.
Yeah, he promised some great things if you were to be obedient to him.
And still with that, they were struggling to have a child, which him and his wife really wanted to. So once he has his child, Isaac, he comes of age, and God asks him to take him to the top of a mountain in a certain region to sacrifice his child for their sins. Back in the Old Testament, people used to sacrifice lamb to cleanse their sins. That was the act of cleansing your sins. Sacrificing
an act
lamb.
of atoning.
Yeah, because the blood washes away the sins, right? So, without question, Abraham takes a son, and his son Isaac actually carries the wood and that they use as a base on his back, and they go up this mountain. Once they get to the top, Isaac asks, "Where's the lamb that we're gonna sacrifice?" And Abraham says, "No worries, it's all
God will provide. Yeah.
God will provide." But then it comes to the point where Abraham is getting ready to sacrifice Isaac. And at the last moment, before that knife comes down, an angel of God comes down and stops him and says, "No need. You've proven your like kind of like your love and
for
your
God,
faith.
yeah,
You've proven
obedience
it.
for God.
No need." And at the same time, there was a ram that was like hanging out in the area, and they ended up sacrificing that instead. But the fact that he was so committed, he loved his child so much. He's been wanting that his whole life, but still had more love for God at the end of the day.
Yep.
And it's almost like a scary story to think like, why would God ask anybody to sacrifice their own child? But then again, God sacrificed his only son, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, a lot of
He's
imagery
testing him,
between Christ and bearing the cross on his back, and Isaac bearing the wood on his back that was meant to be a sacrifice for him. Abraham's only son.
Yeah.
A lot of cool imagery back and forth.
I mean, and this was Old Testament way before even Jesus Christ came about, right? And I've seen the mountain that he took Isaac to was the same mountain that Jesus Christ got.
I watched that video. Who sent it?
Yeah. Ooh. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna put it back up. But Jesus Christ was crucified on the same mountain that Isaac was crucified on.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to think that
Maybe.
He was foreshadowing the sacrifice that Jesus will give, a couple hundred years later. Was it kind of 100,000 years? I'm not sure what the detail was. Foreshadowing Jesus' sacrifice for everyone.
The father of nations, and then Jesus comes. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but I feel like it's thousands because it's many generations.
Yeah, it's probably thousands
that precede Abraham.
Yeah, foreshadowing what Jesus was going to do for everyone, every human in the future. He was foreshadowing that.
Yeah. I mean, but that is like an extreme act of faith. But nowadays it's like what is it that really means to have faith? You know, I think that with your testimony, it's like you have a clear example and you've seen what is real. And for most of us, we have to just kind of like take that leap and, you know, just live by it and have hope and faith that is real. You know what I mean? And that makes it real enough in our minds, I guess.
And you know what? I relate to Abraham, you know, because when you meet God, you know it's nothing but love and truth. Like, you know, even if you don't understand it, you know you have to obey because he's everything. You know, he's the divine creator. He's nothing but love and truth. So if he tells you to do something, whether you understand it or not, you're going to obey. Because once you meet the divine creator, you know, it's ultimately, even though you don't know the plans, God knows the plans. You know, he knows what's...
Well, to do that too, I think when you recognize, you know, God is the ultimate good. He's good and just. So anything he would ask of you would be in the service of righteousness and justice.
Exactly.
And then, you know, that also conflicts with a lot of people out there of, why is he asking him to kill his son? What's so good and just about that?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is really that practice of sacrifice is also a very big testament of faith. Is, you know, you put something as in its place as, you know, the highest possible good, and then you make everything else in your life, your relationships, your own selfish desire and everything like that, all that is
compared to that?
No,
it's like secondary,
Yeah, it's secondary. Mm. It's secondary to serve, you know.
God comes first, and then everything else comes after.
The ultimate purpose would be, I think, in Abraham's, you know, cases, the ultimate good is, you know, following the Lord's commands and obey Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you sacrifice, you know, yourself, your desires, your relationships, and then even your children.
Yeah.
And so it shows just, as, you know, the more valuable your goal is, equally the more value those sacrifices have to be.
Yeah.
And so that's like, you know, a sacrifice that you have to do is give your son to what serves the most good, highest good.
Exactly. And, you know, I relate to that story because, you know, Abraham loved Isaac more than anything else in this physical world. You know, there's nothing more he loved than his son. He was 100 years old. He had his son at a very old age. That's all he wanted his whole life was a son, his only son. And Isaac lived up to all the expectations he had for his son, you know. Is the dream son he wanted. And he was still willing to sacrifice what he loved most in this physical world to serve God. And I relate to that because, you know, when he came to me, you know, he told me, you know, I want you to leave the life you had behind, which I love to. You know, I was truly happy and I lived my life to the fullest before I had this experience with God. And, you know, giving up my 6-figure job, you know, giving up my lustful, you know, like, you know, all the women I had and all that, just giving up all my pleasures, all my loves of this physical world to serve the greater good and to recruit people to the truth. And that's what he commanded of me. And I relate to that deeply, you know. That's why I'm like, I don't even care about anything in this physical world. You know, I care about serving God. It's the same how Abraham, you know. Like,
and Abraham grew up in a rich family, right? Mm-hmm. He had the life that anybody would have wanted in the physical world, at least, right?
Yeah.
Like, he had all of that. He had no reason to really go out and search for anything else. But him hearing a voice and, you know, being so convinced that isn't all there is to life. Mm-hmm. It made him go out and venture out, and he saw what the world really has to bring, you know. And I mean, that compared to the day-to-day life that we have now, perfect example, right? You have to give up those things, and you have to.
I like how watched a little Jordan Peterson earlier today too in preparation, but he put it in the, you know, the framework of, you know, he calls him to pretty much go on this adventure and, you know, pursue the adventure of your life rather than, you know, staying comfortably in your father's tent while they feed you peeled grapes and, you know, you have everything that you could ever need or want, or maybe not need by the greater sense, but by your own. But that you're called to have the adventure of your life, and in that pursuit, pursue the highest possible good, and be a force for good for not just yourself but others as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just an example, like for every day, for every human on earth, put God first, everything else secondary, regardless of, if it's your wife, your kids, money, women, whatever, but God first no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was
like I was saying, you even sacrifice all those other things you just named.
Yeah, exactly. Money,
when
women,
appropriate,
all that, yeah.
to serve
to
the
serve
higher
God,
purpose.
Yeah. Like once you get a message from God, you cannot disobey. You just know it's nothing but love and truth, and you cannot go against God's words, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that's the faith in even the absence of understanding.
Exactly.
That's what faith really means. Like the difference of like I have faith, or I know for a fact, and I have all of the answers to prove it. It's different. Because you have faith, and that's what that means. You don't know all the answers, and you can't have the answers, or else, frankly, it'd be too easy. You know what I mean? I guess what's the point of everything if it's just like, if you go on as God right here, right now, show me you're real, and then immediately just shows up right here as a supernatural power and shows you what's up, If everybody did that, I don't know, like.
Well, I like this because the...
He kind of like builds, he still has something to build on your character. If you easily just sit there and...
Well, where do you think character comes from?
Character?
Mm-hmm.
It comes from that, right? It comes from like the fact of like a challenge and questioning. I guess it's like character is built off of like, children are spoiled in a sense and like, come up having everything they have.
Yeah.
However, character really comes from those aspects in life that make you question that, and make you question if there's even a point for anything, if what you're doing is the right thing. It's the questioning of it, and ultimately, once you go through that challenge of life on your own, in a sense,
I think it's not even going through it. I think it's because I don't want to say that that character, is a testament to your own personal sacrifice and your own struggle, and that you accept, that adventure of your life and all these struggles and, heartache and depression and malevolence that it will bring you, that you openly accept those things and welcome them into your life, because, like, that's a part of life. It's a part of life to struggle and deal with those things and overcome those things, and in overcoming those things and defeating them, I think that's what, I think ultimately builds character.
Yeah. And without those things, like, what really makes you who you are? And a lot of people will like look at those struggles and immediately think that there is no good. There's like nothing. It's just me.
Yeah, and it's not just for other people too, and it's not just like for your reputation of being someone with good character. Because I mean, people like who are just like, oh man, that guy, like, I love him to death. He's the best dude I ever met. He's such a stand-up dude, and he's built such a reputation for himself. But it's also like for your own self, and your own self-worth is, how do you really know what you're made of unless you're tested?
Yeah, thanks. And I feel like character is another thing when, all humans have free will. We all have, free will and our own conscience. So we have, in this world, we can easily do bad, we can easily do good. But the ones that have good character choose to do good regardless of, of even if they get more selfish desires of being greedy or whatever.
They choose to sacrifice.
They choose to treat us how they want to get treated. They live by the golden rule based off their character, based off the morals they were established with. And that's why there's a lot of differences between humans of the ones that choose to do good even when they don't think anyone's watching, and then the ones that do evil behind closed doors. That builds your true character behind closed doors of who you really are. And even before this experience, I felt like I had good character, but once he revealed himself to me, you give up. You even realize that it's even more important to be less selfish and more serve the greater good, serve God, than to live by your own selfish or your own fleshly desires.
Yeah, and I mean, like, when you say like people doing evil and stuff, some people don't see it as evil, and it's like it's not a bad thing because you're not harming other people in most senses, when it comes to like doing evil or again like I don't like to use the word evil as if anything like
sin.
Yeah, away from the way of I guess Christ in a sense, because we're very lucky to live in a time after the Messiah. Again, people in the Old Testament had to just live by pure faith. We still have to live by some kind of faith, but we have some kind of like good evidence of somebody that came down and preached that word and said, I'm going to show you the example of what that is, and just do that, and through me you'll get the love of God. Just if you live by my commandments, you'll have my love. And just as I live by my Father's commandment and I have his love, right? This is something that Jesus said to his disciples, right? And it's just...
And that's why I think that God made himself into human form of Jesus, because I think before Jesus, there was too many people that were not going to heaven. They didn't have a good example to live by, so they're just worshiping false prophets, living for their own selfish desires. Well, that even like I need to make a change to this. I'm gonna put myself in human form and show people how it's really what you really need to, how you really need to live, the way, the life, everything, the truth. And this will be a clear example for people. It's not that hard to follow. Follow Jesus. Treat others how you love. Treat others how you want to be treated. Treat others with love and compassion, and stay away from sins, because ultimately the 7 deadly sins do stop you from reaching your full potential, like greed, gluttony, sloth, pride, lust, all of them, all the 7. They really stops you from reaching your full potential. And even for myself, after this experience, I was like, kind of like when I would pray, I like arguing with God, like, hey, if I'm straight up with these women and I'm telling them,
yeah, like excusing it.
Yeah, I was like, if I'm telling them I don't want anything serious, I'm just here for a good time, and they're cool with it, I could have the best of both worlds. And then you really realize, if you do intertwine and have sexual relations with a girl that you don't have any long-term intentions, my heart would never get hurt, but I'm sure their heart and soul will get hurt in some way once that relationship ends, once I choose to move on, because if I don't have any long-term intentions with them, it's eventually going to stop. And eventually someone's going to get hurt. Yeah. So I was like, I realized on my own gradual process, 7 deadly sins is not good for anybody, And I think you got to do with long-term intentions.
Sacrificing your present and, the present hedonistic desires that you have to, the unknown future of something that's doesn't exist and is just kind of out there, where just making the proper sacrifices dependent on what your highest goal is. Because like we talked about previously, some people's highest goal is money or sex or luxury or all these things.
Physical world, yeah.
But where does that get you?
It's like we talked about last time, like what your goal is in a sense. What are you striving for, and what do you really want out of the world, But
yeah. But what purpose are your actions serving?
Yeah, I guess ultimately that's a difficult question to ask yourself and see where that takes you. And that goes into where do you put your faith in? And we put our faith in directly Jesus Christ and God. Mm-hmm. And people will put their faith in other things, and people will put have
it also
in myself or whatever.
An act of worship is like putting that thing in the highest place.
So what is it you're worshiping?
That's what I was about to say. Is a part of the 10 Commandments is you should not have faith or should not worship anything but God. And people, I feel like nowadays be worshiping money or possessional things or women or whatever they putting that before God. Yeah, putting that before God. And God wants His creation to live life to the fullest, to reach their full potential. And the way you do that is by staying away from sin and following Jesus. Like He just wants that for His creation. Like.
That's the thing too, right? Like, let's say whatever people decide to put their faith and worshiping towards, it's always easy to be like, but you're worshiping God. Then it's always easy to dismiss that. Well, God, this and that. God isn't real. God, for people, right? God isn't real. Why would I put my worshiping towards that? So now it's an easy chance to be like, okay, well,
what are you
just
worshiping
look at
then?
and then just look at what. Okay, I believe there is a supernatural power and there is a God. However, if you don't believe there's a supernatural power and a supernatural God, just look at what we are calling God. What is God to us, and what does that bring? And then you compare and contrast. Whatever it is that you are worshiping compared to what we mean by God and what we're worshiping. And it's just straight love and compassion and forgiveness towards others. And I think that nobody can really look at everything that Christ asks us to follow and be like, that's the wrong way to live life. Mm-hmm. However, other things that people worship, such as money or, lust, that definitely comes with some consequences for yourself and the people around you. But, okay, by calling it God that we worship, it kind of like, it unmotivates people.
Yeah,
because it's God. However,
like,
the actual,
when I say it in like a context like that, kind of what I mean is I'm worshiping the highest moral and ethical good. And, that's God for me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm striving towards. That's the goal. And, maybe, hopefully other people maybe who even say they don't believe in God are also doing the same, that they're pursuing, the highest moral and ethical good themselves. And maybe they just don't equate that with God, or it's a lot of discovery to kind of get to that point. And I mean, it didn't take me overnight to like come to these conclusions or anything myself. Yeah. But if you're not doing that, take the word God out of the equation. If you're not, pursuing the highest moral and ethical good, then what are you pursuing?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question that everyone has to ask themselves is, what's at the top there for you, and what are you sacrificing to get there?
Yeah. And I was talking with one of my friends about this because he still has his doubts, even though there's overwhelming evidence of Jesus being the one true God. He has his doubts, and I was just thinking to myself, I was like, why can't he just make it undeniable, 100%, like he ingrained it in me? Why can't he do that to every single human on earth? Mm-hmm. But it's he's using me as a vessel to recruit for him, but he doesn't make it undeniable for everybody, because you can't have free will and then force someone to worship you. They have to desire that on their own. And I feel like I sent my friend this paragraph. It says, according to biblical theology, God does not make his existence undeniable because he desires a relationship based on free will, love, and faith, rather than a coerced obedience. Undeniable, overwhelming proof would remove the necessity of faith, reducing human moral freedom to soul-making, and turning belief into an intellectual obligation rather than a voluntary response. Yeah. So he wants his creation to voluntarily love him. He doesn't want to force them. He wants them to choose to love him.
That's why he doesn't just show himself to everyone.
Yeah, that's why I questioned him. I was like, why can't he just present himself to everyone like he did to me? Like, why can't he just do that? But, he wants his creation to love him back. I was just fortunate.
By choice, by faith. By faith,
yeah. And he just wants everyone to have the free will to choose to follow the right path. Choose that path. And, those are the ones that, the saying, blessed are the ones that have not seen but still believe. That's some truth. That's what he wants from all his creation. He wants all his creation to willingly love him, willingly have faith, and willingly follow him, and not force them to follow him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's like, people have to decide what they are going to be faithful for and what are they going to be worshiping in a sense. And again, for us, we don't need to have all the answers, because we recognize that for a lot of things in the physical world, you can't have all the answers, But I think that would be a good time for the last call. Do we have that Bible verse that we're going to look at tonight?
So this is verse of the day it's Romans 10:13. And it says, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And then pretty much, it relates to our episode again, Pretty much anyone who believes in the Lord and follows the Lord will be saved, regardless.
For anyone who calls on the Lord.
Calls on the Lord, yeah. Exactly.
I mean, just like how, when you had your experience, he asked you, tell people to call upon me and I'll show them myself.
Hey, he told me the ones he knew. He knew everyone was going to take what I was saying as facts. He knew. He's like, hey, the ones that have their doubts, the ones that don't believe in what you're saying is facts, tell them to pray in a quiet area and ask me for a sign that he exists, and I'll show him myself. And I can't tell you how many countless examples of it happened to my family and friends. This guy personally, my brothers that were damn near atheists, he showed an overwhelming sign where they're like, whoa, they got like an inner peace feeling, they got goosebumps, they're like, whoa, that was way too strange of a coincidence to be a coincidence. You know, I call that again, a God-coincidence.
God-coincidence.
Yeah, that's how he makes himself known. He sprinkles himself. Hey, you ask and you shall receive. And you know, most people that open their heart and actually open their mind to, hey, you know what, there is a divine creator. Let me just find out. The ones that seek the truth will find the truth. You know, and the ones that don't even care about seeking the truth, they're so manipulated and encapsulated in this physical world, they will never seek the truth. You know, and that's what brings sadness to my heart. But I hope one day people will eventually, you know, find the truth for themselves. You know, hopefully one day.
Hey, I mean, when people make the decision to, you know, in their heart seek Him out, that'll be a changing time for them.
Seek and you shall receive.
Yeah.
Knock and the door will be open.
Well, cheers, y'all.
Cheers, baby.
Cheers and stay blessed, everyone.
Stay blessed, everyone. Stay blessed.